Hey, hey,
Good morning, Valko.
good morning. We had Seb in here. Maybe he's getting rugged. I invited him as speaker, so we'll see. Oh, we got Ed in the room. What is up? Seb,
Hello. Good morning.
GM. It's been a while since I
GM.
saw you at the Punks meetup in Miami. How have you been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty busy. How about you?
Not too shabby. Also pretty busy. Just got back from DAO Tokyo, which was definitely top crypto conference I've been to. Highly recommend it. It was cool to be at a conference focused specifically on DAOs. Like I felt like because the topic wasn't as broad, we are able to go a little bit deeper on governance and why decentralization matters in real ways, not fluffy buzzwordy ways. You guys there? Or am I rugging?
Yep, yep, yep,
Okay,
yep.
cool.
I'm here. Let me just share this so folks can join.
Yeah, I'll share the space around as well so folks can hop in.
I I've shared it with every Discord I'm in. People might uh, be beginning to despise me. I'm like just a Twitter space bot now.
So I shared the space at the top of this space. So if you guys can like retweet that, that'd be cool to let people know.
So Forever Punks, I saw a tweet from you today saying that you have a big announcement. Uh,
Well, yeah, it's we're deploying the bidding today. It's going live after all this work. So yeah, kind of excited. Yeah, gonna just spending my day writing a long thread explaining everything. So
so
yeah,
basically, you're coming to the rescue on the punk floor.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best.
Oh man, Seb, have you been keeping up with the bidding function he's building?
I have not. I have not.
Give him the TLDR.
Well, hey Seb, nice to meet you. I don't know if we've interacted previously, but basically, punks they don't have a proper like bidding functionality, right? They're not
Yeah.
NFTs, so you cannot like trade bid. You cannot really collection bid without wrapping them. And so I built a platform where you can essentially like trade bid and collection bid any specific subset of punk. So if you, for example, just want an albino hoodie punk and bid 200 WETH on it, as of today, you'll be able to do it.
That's pretty cool. It's actually something that I wish was like more common, just not like just for punks, but for other collections as well. I know OpenSea launched a feature with that in the past.
Yeah,
Um,
so OpenSea has that, but the thing with punks is that they're not the ERC 721
yeah.
standard. That's why it never really had that. So we built like custom smart contract to be able to adopt that.
Well, and then there's this whole narrative that if you've wrapped your punk, it's no longer a virgin punk and it's unworthy, which I think is kind of a ridiculous narrative. But I also do like punks with very simple provenance, where like you basically got it from the claimer. Like that's pretty badass.
Valko, have you been following your hoodie punk? The price of your ex hoodie punk.
No, not since I saw it sell for 400K. Has it moved hands since?
Well, it's quite an interesting story, right? Because it's a gorgeous hoodie punk with a VR, right? And I think of 3 weeks ago, Punk's OTC bought it at 215 ETH, right? Which is crazy cheap when I saw it. And then since then, like the floor has been like going properly down. And last week, Punk's OTC listed it at 199, right? So, and I've actually never seen this before that he was willing to take a loss within 2 weeks, you know?
Wow.
So, So yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Seb, for context, we uh we were talking about the first punk I got, which I think I picked up for like point 0.1 or 0.14 ETH back in 2017. So like less than 200 bucks. I mean, frankly, it might have been like 70 bucks or something. And I ended up selling it to get the one I have now. I think I sold it for 5 ETH and then used the 5 ETH to get Valka. And it had just been stagnant, sitting still until about 2 weeks ago. It sold for 400K. So I was trying to do the math on like, well, I have I turned two punks into five punks. The two I had initially were both hoodies, and those have absorbed obviously a lot of attention and value. And it's unclear to me whether I would have been better off just doing nothing, or whether my five punks, were more valuable than the two. Uh, Unclear. I don't really want to do the math because I don't want to feel bad about having taken action. Because almost always when I take action, especially in this space, you're better off doing nothing. But awesome. Thanks for joining us, Seb. I think we've got a good number of folks in the room. Maybe you can just do a quick introduction of yourself and what you are up to. Because when I met you in Miami IRL, I had no idea who you were, and it was a very pleasant surprise to be meeting you. I think it was one of the more exciting introductions or IRL meets of the day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely fun. I remember us having a pretty fun chat. Um, but yeah, a little intro on myself. I'm Seb, the co-founder of Zapper. For those that don't know, Zapper is like a Web3 explorer. Our goal is to really surface the chain and make it readable for everyone, so you can track your portfolio, track someone else's portfolio or account, see the NFTs they own. You can explore the different DeFi protocols. And one big feature that we're working on, which is in beta right now, is our activity feed. Um, so you'd be able to see all the different things that are happening on Ethereum live. You can follow people, you can create lists, you can share those lists. So we actually have a Punk OG list that was created on Zapper. So I check that one often to get some alpha. And yeah, our goal is really to bring people closer to the source of, you know, where things are actually happening. Like yesterday, I posted a little tweet about like the Michelin star guide of getting new opportunities in crypto, up from 0 stars, which is like reading the newspaper, like very far, up to like 1 star is like Facebook, Reddit, and 2 stars would be like Twitter, Discord, or Telegram, where most people kind of find opportunities. And then obviously the best one is like following people on chain, tracking the reputation and basing your investments or things you discover on that. And so that's something we've been really focusing on recently. And myself, I have a background in finance. I studied in finance, but I actually ditched it very quickly after college and learned how to code. And so I've been kind of a weird hybrid, like designer, developer. Just consider myself to be a builder, more broadly speaking. Had a few startups in the past and got involved in crypto in 2017. And started, carrying and more deeply investigating crypto in 2019 with the DeFi craze. So I was pretty active in different communities. And that's when I first discovered punks. But obviously, I did not buy one. I remember just hanging out on different DeFi discords. I saw a lot of people with punk avatars. And I remember even like just checking the prices, like, oh, I could get one. And I think the floor was probably like 1 ETH, and the price of ETH at that time was pretty low. And it's funny because at that time I couldn't get myself to pay that much for a punk. But yeah, what a mistake. I eventually bought 40 40x more, but I'm happy. I'm happy now.
So is the one you have now your first punk, or have you rotated through a few?
It's my first and only punk.
Amazing. Well, it's a great one. It's got some strong punk vibes, I would say.
Yes, it's exactly why I picked it. I really wanted one that kind of had those really punk features, the cigarette, the mohawk, the glasses.
Yeah, it's clean. It's clean. We've actually got a lot of clean punks in the room. I really like Dawes punk. Got the messy hair, the sunglasses, the mustache. It's quite a strong vibe, and he's got a mustache IRL, which I think is great. As do I actually, but I think I might have to shave it off just to look a little bit more like my punk. And then Lana Moore's got clean purple hair punk, which I love. So Seb, um, how has your pitch of Zapper.fi, like, you explained it to us kind of as this like way to surface information and a way to visualize blockchain data, but how has that evolved over time from like the day you started the company until now?
It changed quite a lot. I'd say like the foundation never really changed. But so initially we were really focused on the DeFi portfolio tracking side of things, um, and which coincided really with the DeFi explosion that we experienced. And at one point, I'd say maybe it was so we launched in 2020, and I'm always kind of mixed up in the dates in the crypto bull market because so much happened. But at one point, um, during that the DeFi boom, we kind of realized there's like a crossroads, or there's like two ways this product can fork, and one of them was we can be like a mint.com or like a really like tax software, a very like a pro financial tool. Um, or what if what we're building is actually like an account profile? It's like your on-chain profile, and what we've surfaced so far is just your DeFi stuff. And that became really interesting because it spoke much more to the Web3 nature and the open nature of the space. And it also kind of made a few decisions much simpler. So, take for example, um, there's a point in Zapper's history where we didn't support NFTs, like we didn't index them, and we're actually wondering if we should support them or not, which seems like in hindsight like such a silly thing to um, to think about, right? Uh, but at that time, we're like, should we support NFTs? Because it seemed like a very niche thing and kind of not too much overlap with DeFi. Um, but what was interesting is we saw a shift in users. Like the space was dominated by, I'd say, like a lot of people that were in DeFi, but with time, we noticed like people kind of dabbled in a little bit here, a little bit in DAOs, a little bit in NFTs. And even with time, like you see, there's like NFT-fi protocols now. So like the open and composable nature of the space makes these categories, like if you're just surfacing information on chain, kind of irrelevant or kind of weird. You feel like you're forcing these boxes on things where there shouldn't be any. And when you really think about it, a lot of DeFi stuff was more closely aligned to gaming, or like you stake and you earn a token, or you're farming stuff than than actual finance. And so that played a big role. And then our expertise that we've built was really interpreting the chain. So taking something that's raw on the blockchain, like data and its I guess like purest form, and then um, modifying it, not modifying it, interpreting it in a format that is human readable. And we did that with DeFi. And then it's something that we realized we could port to other domains as well, not only DeFi. And so that played a big role in helping us kind of direct to the more block explorer route versus building more of a financial tool. And I was saying that, foundationally, Zapper never really changed because our role was always making the blockchain readable for everyone. It just so happened that our first problem, hair on fire problem that we solved, that was people in DeFi that, they had a bunch of stuff split across a bunch of dApps, and it was really hard to read. And so the number one problem we solved with helping the blockchain be more readable was DeFi. But now we're seeing that happen in a lot of different places. And one big opportunity is, um, that we see is really surfacing everything on chain, the events, so that people can literally, instead of relying on third parties like Twitter, Telegram, um, to get their on-chain information, they can get it from the chain. Um, and another thing that I realized is, and I sent out a tweet about it yesterday, is there's there's a flippening that happened with the way we use social products in crypto that is kind of overlooked, and it's like a very simple thing. It's There's a ton of like crypto influencers that have a huge reputation on Twitter, not because of the content they post, not of the things they write, but because of their on-chain reputation. Dingling because they have a ton of apes and a ton of NFTs. Uh, that became the pillar and foundation of their identity that helped them leverage to gain a much larger following. And I expect that in the future, instead of uh, being influencers to on-chain, the like off-chain reputation migrating to the chain. It's the other way around. We formulate our someone else's identity, reputation, their trading skills, their taste in art from the chain instead of relying on whatever they decide to put out, right? Because off-chain, there's a filter. I can decide to put out whatever the content. I can post my best trades. I can hide the silly NFTs I bought during the NFT summer. And so it becomes a much more interesting piece to formulate someone's identity. Um, and that's like a huge thing that helped us like really kind of nail our focus to like make the blockchain readable, because we see all these different things that we can leverage and do to like help people kind of migrate to the chain.
That's a really interesting realization. I mean, because when I roll back to like 2017 when I got my punk, um, I like fucked around. It was this hoodie punk that I ended up selling. I like fucked around with it in Microsoft Paint. I added some arms to it, and I made it my Twitter profile picture. Like way back then, before I think people even realized that NFTs would become like such powerful profile pictures, or that would be kind of the one of the redeeming use cases. But as time evolved, more people started doing it, and Twitter and Discord. But the right click and save meme like really came alive, and the way you could really prove that you were your profile picture, or that you were the owner of that punk truly, was you would make a cryptographic signature or a message from your wallet stating like I am at Twitter handle on Twitter, and then you would post that link in your bio. You would save all the like three outputs of the signature using like Etherscan's like signature tool, and then at that point people could go to your Twitter profile. They could click on this link and see a message signed from your wallet, the same wallet that owns that punk. Hopefully it still owns it. They'd have to verify that, stating like, okay, I'm this person on Twitter. And that was really, really powerful. And like you said, I think that started to like, I mean, frankly, I think one of the reasons I even have any sort of Twitter clout, not that I'm a huge person on Twitter, but I have over 5,000 followers. That's something. I attribute a lot of that, frankly, to just having a punk. And having worked at Yat Labs, I think that helped as well. And now I post like a lot of content and I'm building my own things. But a lot of it was seeded with this notion of like, I own a punk. And I think as folks like you come along and make that chain data easier to interpret, it will be even easier for that osmosis to kind of happen of like, here's the on-chain data and here's how it's influencing things on Web 2 or Web 2.5 social platforms. But I mean, we still have a long way to go in that department. But I think what you're doing is really cool because effectively you can build almost a Twitter list, but instead of Twitter accounts, it's wallets, and you can see their actions kind of just like you would in the Twitter feed. And so, does that feed include primarily just NFT actions, or is it like NFT and non NFT actions, or up to how the user wants to filter? How does that work?
So it's everything, every transaction on chain. Um, and we've built there's like a few topics that we built, and the plan is to have like dynamic topics. So the topics we have are like NFTs, ENS registration, swaps, mints. And so you can filter the feed and just check events in those specific things. But if like I follow you or I follow, 100 people, I'll see what those 100 people, everything, that's happening on chain. So it
Yeah.
could
Oh
be
my
any type
gosh.
of
This is
event.
going to increase accountability so much. I can already imagine
Yes.
some shill being like, buy like, Pepe, and then like immediately before that you see like this user sold all of their Pepe.
Yeah, and it's. I think we'll look back and be like, it's crazy that like this was how crypto, because the information is there, but the further away, so taking like the chain and Twitter, like the further away the um, the message or information is being relayed, the more likely there's like distortion. So your example of Pepe is a good one because you know someone can be shilling Pepe, and then they just sold it, on chain. Like there's distortion there in that signal. The message is far from the origin, and so people are basing themselves on a filtered view and a modified view of the blockchain,
Right.
which
And
is
like
why I
what
think
what they
Twitter is
can
dangerous
uncover kind of
for that.
after the fact, sifting through the chain. I mean, it's so messy, but like if you really do see that like buy call by an influencer preceded by them immediately dumping it, it's like painfully clear. Like, okay, like this person's using their audience as their exit liquidity. Like it didn't take some sleuth to figure that out a week later and then prove it with like, a link to a tweet that could have been deleted and now we just have a screenshot and then a link to an Etherscan transaction. It's like, nope, like it's all here. Like, so have you guys thought about kind of commingling the Twitter timeline with your timeline so that you could achieve something like this,
Yeah,
or that's a drift away from the product you guys are envisioning?
I don't think it's necessarily a drift. I don't know to what extent we'll have like these social type features on Zapper, like have Twitter be closer. I think with time, the like these social interactions, like the more like high bandwidth, like just content will be closer to the chain. I don't know like exactly what that'll look like, but I think it'll be like, you know, if you think about like the medieval ages, it'll be like, a town square where people do commerce and, there's people that there can kind of gather, gather together and talk, but like it's closer to the center of commerce. It's not like it's happening like a few miles away. So I think like all these social interactions will happen much closer to the chain than like on a Web2 product. I'm still like trying to think of what format does that take. Like I'm always mindful of like, you know, not recreating like Web2 products. Like how can we recreate like that town market or town center vibe where people kind of go there to do commerce, but also can meet people and talk about things. So
Okay, so just on that
yeah,
idea, I might have even mentioned this in person because it was one of many product ideas that were on my back burner. But I love this lightweight metaverse company called, or they're not even a metaverse company. They're called GatherTown. It's like this 2D pixelated world, kind of like a Pokemon style, but it's meant to be a place for you to connect with like remote work teams. So you can do conferences in there, you can play games in there, you can do office happy hours and activities. I mean, there's all sorts of things, but the cool thing about it is it's as easy to join as a Zoom, but it doesn't try to replicate the world the way most metaverses do. It's very lightweight and therefore it's very accessible to anyone. And it's beautiful. It's a total Web2 company. But then I look at stuff like uh, my my days in RuneScape and going to like the town square and being like selling law runes for 1K, and then some counterparty like a random stranger walks up and initiates a trade with me. Then we're bartering, and then we eventually land on like what we think is a fair deal. That reminds me a lot of the NFT trader experience, but the NFT trader experience is lacking that town square, like that physical environment for you to actually just bump into someone and actually negotiate with them in real time, instead of building their half of the trade for them asynchronously as you would with NFT Trader and hoping that they convert on that. So my dream, and this is not to be prescriptive, but I think what you're describing as this town square reminds me a lot of RuneScape or the other MMORPGs I played. My dream is like take the NFT Trader, um, DApp, layer it in with something like GatherTown or a similar lightweight metaverse, create a town square, and then skin the trading menu in the style of old school RuneScape, just for nostalgia's sake, because we've just got so many MFers from RuneScape out here in the NFT space, and I think that was like, I don't know, it really takes me back, but um, I think that would be
Yeah,
a really cool thing. I think the problem is like, at the end of the day, we have evolved away from bartering for a reason as a society. It's just like not as liquid, but it's definitely not the stock exchange with JPEGs thing we have going on now with Blur, which has obviously boosted liquidity. And it's maybe been like a good thing for the space, but at the same time, I don't think it's like the fun feeling that like goes hand in hand with the NFT experience we've all grown to like know and love.
yeah. And I think like you mentioned a really important point is like if you think about OpenSea, like OpenSea is built a lot like eBay, in the sense that they took a very popular, type of interface that we're very familiar with and applied it to Web3. Um, and one thing I think about, and it makes a lot of sense, right? They're super successful and stuff like that. But you don't get that the feel of being in like a town square or like a digital downtown, right? Um, the foundation in Web3 is completely different than it is in Web2. So I think and there's still like a social aspect to OpenSea, uh, that you can explore different profiles. There is like this really unique Web3 aspect to it, you know, that I think is really interesting. But I think one part that Web3 products are lacking is how can we create this very social town square like feeling to using products? Because that's really what it is. And it's not necessarily like creating a video game interface. I mean, maybe it is, but it's really how can we create this very social kind of feeling of using products? Because when you think about it right now, most products, when you use them, they're very isolating in the sense that when I use Uniswap, I have no concept of other people walking around and doing swaps on Uniswap. I'm kind of there solo doing my own thing. But I'm in the context of, uh, a sandwich attacker, other people that also want to buy my thing. Maybe it's like super busy, the token I want to buy, like kind of like a stock exchange on a busy day. I don't have that feeling. And the only way I can get that feeling is by going on Twitter or going other products. And so how can we consolidate that very important aspect of like that busy traffic to Web3 products? I think that would make it much more would make a much more complete experience of our products. Because if you take again the Uniswap analogy, where you're kind of feeling solo, playing single player or OpenSea, it's kind of as if you'd be walking alone downtown or like completely blind, all while knowing that there's a bunch of other people that are there too, walking around totally blind. And then somehow we go to the Twitter bar and then we talk about our experiences during the day. It's like I think we're just in this a weird stage. It's like weird right now, but eventually, we'll have products that will surface um, the transparent, open, traffic of the blockchain, kind of how a digital downtown should be.
I love that. We need that on chain town square for sure.
Maybe a quick question on my side, Seb. So I spend a lot of time on Etherscan, right? And I guess most of us do as well. I know you guys are like very different from Etherscan, but like I guess the core concept would be similar. No, it's just we could you say that it's more just like a more user friendly Etherscan, or there's like much more stuff to it.
I'd say it's like, exactly that in the sense that we're kind of building a retail block explorer. I don't see us competing with Etherscan because Etherscan serves, you know, data on chain in its like purest form. It's like the closest representation to like what Ethereum actually is. It's funny because I think a lot of people think Etherscan is like Ethereum. Um, and I think it just talks to how well they kind of built their product. Uh, Zapper is like, I'd say like a few levels of abstraction higher, where it's really um, take for example, one thing that we've been talking a lot about is like what's an app in Web3, um, and it's kind of hard to define what it is. It's like a group of smart contracts that are on chain that perform a particular task, and so that's like the level of like interpretation we're thinking about on Zapper at Zapper is like how can we um, take these things in a raw format and then interpret it in a way that's closer to our own understanding or modeling of the blockchain. Um, and that's where there's some really unique and interesting challenges. And I think where the difference where with the Etherscan as well is once you make the blockchain readable for everyone, it is a social product by nature because you're making profile accounts readable, which is servicing their identity. You're like servicing their digital clothes, the type of music they like, the type of person they are, whether they're invested in finance or stuff like that. So it is a very social product by nature because the blockchain is people doing things on chain.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting. Well, let me share a little anecdote, and maybe you can tell me if Zapper is something I can use here, because I'm actually just like clicking around on Zapper, and I mean I knew it before, but I like really like how it evolved since. So I have this friend. He's a good friend of mine, and you could say he's like maybe an NFT degen, and like I know his wallets, and I kind of we DM quite a lot, and he's the type of guy who's like very early to things. He for example, he was very early to checks, and he made a lot of ETH on checks. And last week he was very early to Pepe, and he made a big bag on Pepe. And I was thinking to myself, like I know his wallets, like essentially nothing really stops me from like tracking his wallet and just copy trading him borderline blindly. Uh, is that something that Zapper could, let's say, help with? And for example, do you guys have like notifications and stuff like that?
Yes, definitely. So we're going to be launching our activity feed in about 2 weeks, maybe next week. We'll see. And you'll be able to follow his account, see everything you know he's doing on chain. Um, we won't have notifications, but it's definitely something we're planning to have as well. We there's also a bunch of other features as well related to the feed to like help surface trends. But yeah, that's something you'll be able to do pretty soon. Well, you can try out right now if you want at
Right. It's in
beta.zapper.xyz. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
because I guess the example that I gave is an example of, call it, smart money.
Yeah,
And currently, like most, call it, normies, they go on Twitter and they join these popular Twitter spaces, follow these influencers, and they take their word to be the smart alpha or smart money. Whereas if you could like customize the wallets you follow, the people you follow, like really down to what you like for example, my friend here, then everyone could choose what they think is smart money. I think that could be like a really cool like use case here, which you
yeah,
guys can
100%.
put in place.
And it's something you'll be able to do in just a few weeks.
Well, I cannot wait. I'll be the first one to use it, I guess. And what's the business model you guys are running on?
Right now, we have fees on swaps and bridging, and we also make money through our API. So we have like an enterprise API that people can use.
Interesting. And what? How does like swap and bridging tie into this whole narrative? Like,
So it's something I've been thinking about too a lot is if you think about like, or I'll talk for myself, but I think it applies to a lot of people too, is like our transactional journey. Like from the moment we discover like a specific opportunity, say an NFT collection or a token or DeFi, and the moment we make the purchase, and then you slice that up in time or like the amount of time spent on different apps. Like I think like the amount of time you spend on a Web3 app or like crypto app is probably very little, like doing the transaction, and most of it will be like on Discord, Telegram, or Twitter. And so the a huge part of the investment you make is a lot of like the discovery. It's like the non-write part. It's like the read part. And so I think it becomes interesting where the feed you kind of like discover these new opportunities. So it's like this pull to go back to the feed and find these new things. And it kind of creates this seed for you to take action. And so long term, we kind of see it as a way to like help you make new investments and have it kind of be top of funnel into doing different transactions on Zapper. So if you see Pepe um, in the feed a week ago, well, you can go swap it directly on Zapper instead of going elsewhere.
Interesting. Yeah,
I
that
think
makes
my
sense.
first jump into Zapper was actually using it to like kind of conveniently enter and exit an Alchemix like liquidity mining situation. It was actually the first time I'd ever done any sort of yield farming or liquidity mining a while ago, and I think I ended up kind of just naturally finding Zapper.fi as a tool other people were using, and it definitely made the whole experience like a lot easier for me. And then for a good while, like I was also using Zapper to kind of track like the activity of other friends that were like in the same pools as me, or the people who had told me about the pools I were in. I was tracking their wallets to kind of like see, okay, like they told me to enter this, but like when are they exiting? Like are they exiting tomorrow, a week from now? And that was definitely a super helpful thing. But yeah, it would have been cool to have notifications on top of that too, because it was just kind of like a daily thing to get me back into the app. I guess good for daily active users, but yeah, maybe not the most convenient at the same time. Well, I mean, so what's like the next big thing you think for Zapper? Like, what are you guys focused on now? I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of thinking about NFT social and stuff, but I know another thing from a tweet you mentioned was like NFT-fi. Is that kind of a direction you guys are thinking of moving in with the platform?
I think we're trying to like not what's tricky is it's not like NFTFi itself is like a focus of ours. It's like more building the tooling that allows us to do things like NFTFi seamlessly. Just like because we're building an interpreter and any type of data, you know, um, can be kind of put in a specific way that can result in NFTFi or like DeFi or whatever smart contract, we've built it in a way that it can be anything. So it's not like we're going to be, okay, we put a focus on interpreting NFT-fi stuff. It's like, oh, we built an NFT indexer, and then we've built this tooling that allows us to, you know, take that and calculate your debt in this, pair space, for example, and then surface that on chain. But it's definitely been something in terms of like um, usage, we've seen it grow like quite a lot recently. It's interesting because I see a lot of parallels to early DeFi with NFTFi, where like the early users are like whales. Like early DeFi, a lot of early people there just were sitting on a ton of ETH, and so they didn't have anything. Like they couldn't really do anything with it. Like it would unlock like a humongous tax burden if they did, and so like borrowing against it, like using Maker and Compound, kind of like freed up a lot of capital and had huge tailwind effects for like the ecosystem. And I think like we're starting to see the same thing happen with NFT-Fi. Like you're seeing a lot of like whales like Dingaling uh, leverage a lot of NFT-Fi products to become more capital efficient. And so I think there's like a lot of interesting stuff there that's happening, and we're definitely paying an eye to it and making sure like our infra works very well for that use case. Um, Other than that, like I think a big thing we're working on is trends. So on the feed right now, you have like a more chronological um, list of events of people you follow, and it's like this person did that, that person did this, and every block is like a transaction, and it surfaced well like at a smaller scale level of what something is on chain. But I think it's important. Like one thing that we want to try to solve is how can we surface at at a higher level, like what's just going on chain, like what are the top things people are doing right now, kind of like how Etherscan, we have hot contracts and stuff like that. And so more on like the macro level, how can we surface these opportunities? Kind of how can you get like the news? This is basically Ethereum news.
And is
These
is the idea
filtered.
there to not do it kind of like in a traditional Web 2 way where you're looking at what posts are capturing attentions and likes and
Exactly.
engagement, but rather look at the chain data and apply an algorithm to that?
100%. 100%. Exactly. Yeah, you're totally right. So that's how we're doing it. We don't want to do it via like engagement on a post because that can always be um, like we're trying, like a feed is a slippery slope. And we want to be mindful of not to repeat some of the mistakes of Web 2, which can sometimes exaggerate things that are going on. And so it distorts the actual like fabric of like the new, like what is actually going on. Where now we have like a foundational, um, we have a foundation, like we have a bedrock of like, things that are happening that are unquestionable that we can use to build out trends. And so it makes it allows us to have a much clearer picture of what actually is going on. And I think one thing that's interesting is like everyone on crypto Twitter has kind of their own echo chamber of what's going on in crypto. And so everyone kind of has a window on what's happening on chain, but not totally. And sometimes it's like very distorted for a particular area. Um, or like exaggerated. And so I think like there's a real need to have more truth, um, to have a better idea of what's going on. And so yeah, that'll be a really big focus of ours after we launch the feed.
And tell me about, I'm just kind of going through a tweet the other day of like things that have caught your attention in the space. And we've talked a lot about on-chain social, a little bit of NFT-fi stuff. But what about new metas for ERC 1155? Because when I read that, my mind instantly jumps to um, like subscription NFTs. Like I just launched a Discord community focused on Web3 solopreneurs and indiepreneurs and freelancers. And the idea is I want to create an army of solopreneurs in order to drive the adoption of blockchain, specifically Web3 solopreneurs, because I think a lot of people are focused on the technical aspects and the UI, UX aspects. And my thinking is like, well, if I can build an economy of entrepreneurs within this new industry, then the industry itself will grow. And I also believe that you can't just do an initial lump sum raise for a project and try to coast off its royalties. Like if you were to pitch a VC, hey, we're going to raise money and then our revenue model is to actually make money off the trading fees of our stock. Like they would laugh in your face. Like that's just like not a sustainable business model. So one thing I've always looked at is, well, what are the NFT standards for subscriptions? And that's something that's definitely of interest to me. But I'd be curious, like that's what came to mind when I read new metas for ERC 1155. But what is on your mind with regards to that topic?
Yeah, like I think about it and you know how PFPs were a really good format or like meta for ERC 721. So it was like leveraging that standard in a really good way to like, distribute something. And so PFPs were like a really good way. And it took like a few iterations to figure it out. Like punks were obviously very early on to figure it out. And then you had Bored Apes. And then we had like the NFT Summer that was just an explosion of that. And I don't think we've had that really for 1155s. Well, there's like the open edition, burn and redeem. There's potentially something there. Um, there's something too where I've been like collecting Pokemon cards. I don't collect them now, but like in the past I did. And there's like I don't know, there's like this itch that I have that is like missing in the space that I'm not getting from like collecting PFPs. I am maybe a bit more from like collecting art, but like there's something about like opening a pack of cards, um, like that is, I don't know. To me, there's something there, just like we like the Pokemon craze that we had. Like a bunch of people had the same card, like Charizard. They weren't like different, and it was like a great way to like distribute that franchise to people. And so I'm thinking of like, is there something there? Maybe there's like a intersection with like burn and redeems, but yeah, and that's just me like as a collector. Like it's like I have a missing itch that I feel is could be totally, you know, leveraged in the space to kind of distribute like a brand, a media franchise, art, stuff like that. I really like, for example, I like Lucrece, how he's kind of built a system where, you know, you have, for example, like the proceed with cautions. You know, there's a bunch of burn and redeems, and it. I think that's the most I've kind of gotten that like I fulfilled like that itch of collector. But like more broadly speaking, I don't think we're like quite there. I feel like there's something there, and maybe I am totally off. But I think there's going to be interesting ways to better like uh, like these new metas that will really leverage the unique properties of 1155 to kind of, you know, distribute as something new.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think your gut is right. Like, there's definitely something there. Like that is such an impactful part of, I think, so many people in this space's lives is collecting Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like Magic the Gathering cards. And I think, like, high level, when I think about it, it's like, okay, well, these brands are like world class brands and they're more than just these cards. There's like the card game, there's like the television show series, there's all of the video games, which I think was a lot of our entry ramps into their universes. And then there's this whole huge lore behind all of it that nicely pieces together all these different parts. And there's also just a large collector base. It's not like, oh, there's only 10,000 of these things and it's for anybody who can afford basically a Ferrari. It's like, no, um, literally anybody anywhere can go buy a pack and they can get into this at a ground level. And we've seen other collections follow at least that part of the playbook, right? Board Ape starts with a 10,000 collection, then they expand to 20,000, right? And it gets bigger and bigger, and it allows, like, more people to basically be a part of their world, and they're doing a lot of the world building really well. They have created a game. Um, I mean, it was like a game from like 10 years ago. Like it was like almost a rip of like a kind of classic Temple Run style game. But I think you've seen people, um, Yuga Labs probably being the best example, trying to emulate what this feeling you have is. But I do think there's something missing. And I think, it's almost like a chicken and egg. Like, does somebody need to build it to create mass adoption, or is it actually somebody already with mass adoption, like a Pokemon, actually needs to like bring the people into the space? And it's probably not a black and white thing. Like, it's got to be this one or that one. Like everything, it's probably gray. But um, I mean, I think you're totally onto something there. I mean, like, simply though, I do think it's like there's just not as much culture behind any of the things in this space, period. And so we need things that are more culturally relevant and that are these collections at much, much, much larger, much larger scales, and aren't met with like the annoying constraints of Ethereum, like whether that's costs or scalability or ease of use.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes time to build culture. It's not like it's something that can happen, um, you know, the next day. A lot of like crypto culture is like 12 or 13 years, maybe even more in the making, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you get people that are trying to engineer culture overnight, and then they do one big sale, and then it's like they have everything they need to literally take the money and run, um, and royalties aren't enforceable. So it's like it encourages this vicious cycle of basically pump and dumps. Uh, there's not a lot of incentive for these teams to stay, and like I I think a lot of times people like to blame royalties not being enforceable as the problem, and like everybody must opt into royalties, and like we love creators, and like we do love creators, but I think at the end of the day, like the onus on project creators is like, if you really are in this for the long haul, one, you need to show that, um, and two, you need to come up with like ways to be sustainable and generate recurring revenues, because it's not enough to just raise a lump sum and then just sit back and like hope everything works out. Like that's just a known pool of money with like a known burn rate and runway. And it's
Yeah.
like it's the beginning of the end basically, when you don't see people talk about how is this going to be sustainable.
And like, take an example, X copies. I mean, making glitch art, I think like for the past, I don't know, 12 or 13 years. Well, that he's published. It's been on Tumblr way, way before crypto was, Ethereum was even a thing or NFTs were even a thing. And then grinded, um, you know, ever since. So it seems like it from, an onlooker looking at like the NFT bull run, this like almost like engineered culture, but that was like a long time in the making, or like these things like took time. And so um, I think there's a lot to learn from that. It's not like you can just come in and boom, you're an overnight success.
Yeah, Seb, I have another question on my end, but before I ask it, if anyone from the audience wants to hop up and maybe ask questions, just feel free to request the mic. And so yeah, on my side, I'd be curious very much on like the early days of Zapier. So you mentioned Zapper, you mentioned you started in 2020. And can you just like walk me through a bit how like it started? I guess at the beginning it was just like maybe a side project that I don't know you started by yourself, and how it kind of like evolved into this bigger kind of thing that it is today. Like I don't know, did you raise funds? Did you go through like self-funded stuff, or and how did the bull and the bear market kind of impact the whole evolution?
So Zapper started as a side project in 2019 or like late 2019 as kind of a result of just me playing around in DeFi and participating in different communities. And the first problem I had was tracking my own assets. My very first MVP was just a spreadsheet. I just put my investments there, and eventually just became a pain in the ass to manage. I was like, I could automate that, and just um, built a simple web app that allowed me to track my own assets. And I think like maybe a month later, in January or February, I shared it in the Synthetics Discord. I was like, hey, I noticed like a few of you guys I've talked about this problem you have tracking your own assets, and that's how I got my first users. And I remember like being really, really excited at the beginning because I noticed them like coming back and asking for more features all the time, and I knew I was like onto something pretty quickly. Um, because having built startups before, we're often, very like really attracted to like the absolute number of people and not returning or like retention. And with time, like I knew how retention was hard to get. And even if it was a really small number of users, them coming back every day, I was like, oh shit, yeah. Like if you if you believe that DeFi is going to be big in the future, then Zapper is going to be big as a default because it's solving a fundamental need in that market. Um, and so that's kind of how I knew I was up to onto something. And then in March, that's when like I quit my job to pursue Zapper full time. And I was like in the early pandemic, and so um, like the traction, the users like really gave me confidence in the product. And I think the other thing too is like I realized like with my startup experience how hard it is to get even just a sliver of product market fit. So having experienced that, I was like, yeah, this is it. Like I need to do this full time. I probably won't have chances like this in the future. And so I really dive deep. Um, and yeah, then we had a tremendous amount of growth in DeFi summer. Like we were really like riding the wave and really at the right place at the right time. And we're able to raise a seed round. And then obviously 2021 was completely insane. And we did a Series A then.
It's I've worked with startups for so long, especially before operating at them. I was in venture capital, and so many people ask me like, how do I know when I have product market fit? And my response for a long time has been like, trust me, you'll know. Like if you're not sure, then you don't have it. But I think the way you described it is a pretty good response too. It's like it's not about total number of users. It's about like, do you have even one like user that's constantly coming back? Because if you have that one, then there's probably more. And I like that because one thing I preach a lot in this solopreneur community I'm building is like forget big numbers. Like, yeah, it's good to be ambitious, but like really just focus on making your first dollar. Because if you can find somebody who will pay you $1, then there's probably more, and you can learn to scale, iterate, optimize, and repeat that process. But I like that lens on product market fit or not, like just kind of focusing specifically on the recurring nature and need of like an individual customer or a small handful of customers. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and to the test to know if you have product market fit or not, even just the thought of asking the question sounds like if you have product market fit, the the thought of asking yourself that question is like, what the hell? It's like
Yeah.
so obvious.
Mm. Yeah, it's pretty amazing answer. And I'm actually just scrolling through the beta app you guys have. And weirdly, it reminds me of Twitter a bit, this activity feed. But a much more, I guess, true version of Twitter because it's really like on-chain data mapped here. So I don't know, but do you see this? What I see is that maybe in like 2-3 years, this could be borderline a Twitter competitor.
I mean, in 3 years, that would be pretty good if we're able to do that. I think long term, this is where the puck is going in terms of social products in the future. Because like Web 2, um, our social network in Web 3 is very, very weak and is kind of breaking because like everyone can put out the content they choose, which mean and they can say whatever they want. And if you use that as like the bedrock for like social network, it'll crumble. Meaning like can put the illusion of my identity that I want. Like I can decide what content I put out there. And if that's like the nodes that link us between people, then that's not gonna be a great social network. Web 3 is like now you have not only what you have what people do, so you have their actions, you have the art they collect, you have the mistakes they did, you have a much better picture of who someone is. And I think long term that's where social is going. I think 3 years is like very soon, but who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
actions speak
Do
louder than
you-
words, and this space is strange in that you can basically glass box look into everyone's bank account, but their bank accounts are more than their bank accounts now. It's like what events they attended and what things they voted on within their DAO. Like it goes so much further beyond just basic transactional data, even though these entries on the ledger are often referred to as transactions. There's so much more than that. BTNK, what is up? Thanks for joining on the stage. Love the mustache, love the purple cap. Welcome.
How's it? Thanks for having me. I've just been listening in. I just wanted to share a bit. I don't really have a question. How I got to Zapper XYZ. Yeah, been following this Pepe trend, and Dario was in a lot of spaces and was saying, go on to what's it? What's the app? TikTok. Go onto TikTok. There's so many memes on Pepe just for entertainment's sake. So I went onto TikTok, which I never go onto. And there was one guy giving you financial advice on how to make money. And it was exactly what you guys were talking about now, is just to go through your top 100 guys or 100 tokens, say on CoinMarketCap, go see one of the top holders and then see what else they have in their wallet, and then go onto Zapper, and then just sort of copy what they do. And then I was just thinking, well, hang on, I can have a look at this on Etherscan, but it's quite manual. So I was like, okay, let me have a look at this Zapper. And I went on to Zapper the first time this week, and it was absolutely amazing, the user experience. And I was like, okay, I can get this on Etherscan, but this is way easier, way user friendly. And I love the vision of having something like a town hall, having this something, and then you post it later. I was thinking of the World Wide Web, where you just run around, you have your avatar, you walk around, and you see are the streets busy or not, and sort of what is your history, what are you holding, and sort of where do the crowds walk to. So just big ups. Used the app first time this week, and I was like, wow, this user interface is amazing. I'm going to use it in the future. Thanks. So,
Seb, we're going to come back in a week's time and we're all going to be rich because we started using Zapper.fi's 3-star Michelin content system.
I love it.
We'll connect it. Chat GPT is going to do the whole thing with Zapper in the background, and it's all going to be good.
Seb, what's your take on Lens? So at DAO Tokyo, a lot of people are talking about Lens protocol. I personally am like a big fan. Like I think a lot of us in this space are rooting for the democratization of like Web3 social, and Lens I think has really embodied that to the core. But the problem is like for as many fanboys as there are like me of Lens protocol, like I don't even use it, right? And then there's like obviously Farcaster, there's Blue Sky, and there's all these other things, often Twitter clones, which I think is like a whole other weird thing that everybody's just trying to copy Twitter instead of, as you said, trying to like maybe twist the model a bit and not just copy Web2 models and apply them to Web3. But what's your take on, I guess, that whole space? Like, what do you think is missing? Like, why aren't these things getting traction? Is it frankly just like the age old cold start problem that they are struggling to overcome, or do you think it runs deeper and it kind of goes back more to like, well, they just don't have product market fit, or like the barrier to Web3 is too high still, these things are too technical? Like, what is it? What's your opinion? And like, what do you think is next, if not like Zapper.fi?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I honestly think it's mostly about product market fit because I think we can all agree to an extent that there's going to be a Farcaster or Lens type product in the future where people can post content and it's fully decentralized. You can port your accounts, from one place to another. But like, regardless of what is like this, what we consider like this undeniable truth in the future, there's nothing undeniable. Like nobody really knows. You still have to figure out a way to get there, and you have to figure out a path where you're solving problems, or you're hitting a spot in the market. It's just like if Facebook had launched for you know something other than colleges, would it have worked? I don't know, probably not. Like it started from a small market that really wanted that type of product versus starting to, have, my parents, like my mom on it from the very early on. And I think that's like, there's definitely a lesson there. I really like Lens and Farcaster's mission for sure. I think a danger is always that, you know, we're potentially taking a lot of things from Web 2 that don't necessarily apply in this new space, or we're trying to recreate other products that maybe don't even need to exist um, in this kind of new paradigm. We're still like in the very exploration phase, and that we kind of always see it with new technology. And it's something I found with DeFi. Like early on, everyone was talking about, oh, let's port all these DeFi, these traditional finance instruments to DeFi. It's just going to be more efficient. And what we realized is like those products never really took off because it wasn't like it was the new native on-chain things that really popped off, like AMMs, things that weren't possible before.
Right. It's like this notion of like horizontal versus kind of vertical innovation. I don't know if anybody here has read or listened to like Peter Thiel's Zero to One book. It's like pretty popular in the startup space, but he says, really for things to take off, like it has to be like a 10x improvement. You got to be able to do something that like wasn't possible before. It can't just be like a small incremental innovation or like same thing, different medium. Like he's kind of pushing for things that are like new things and new mediums almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing that's interesting too, and thinking about like the Lens, Farcaster, and all these products is, they're there's a reason why they're leveraging Twitter, and it's like that's like their way to like attack the market. They see there's a problem with Twitter, and they, that's how they think that it's like their path to growth. But I think the danger in that is like you're building it in a way like an opinionated social protocol. Like Lens has a follower graph, and it's posts, and there's a timeline and stuff like that. But we know like Web 2, like um, networks are very different one from another. Like Facebook doesn't have followers, it's friends. They're all very different. And so there's always like that danger when you take a route. It's like, okay, you're taking one product, but like social can have a bunch of very like mutable states that can exist, or different variations of how you can form like these digital relationships between people. So there's always that risk, and potentially that model doesn't apply itself. um, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I am excited for somebody to solve is I really wish there was a Twitter list of CryptoPunk holders that updated in real time so that when somebody new joins the collection, I'm following them and that they can follow this Twitter list and automatically be following me and every other punk. Like there's so many lists that are manually curated in the space of crypto punks or whatever the hell. And they're all like out of date, full of imposters or people who used to own punks that no longer hold punks. And like it seems like a pretty simple thing, right? All you got to do is like get the, username to wallet connection, but like and Farcaster has that kind of built in natively, which is really cool and gets me optimistic about that whole world and the ability to have these types of things. Because I think going back to what you said earlier, like Web 2 social patterns kind of following the on chain data, I think like in terms of the social graph, like a friendship, like we both own the same JPEG or I am a part of this collection, like the peer to peer or the peer to parent relationship, it's like the atomic building block of friendships in the social graph in Web3. And it's actually like impossible to currently tap into that and kind of abide by this punks follow punks meme. But it is an unspoken rule in this space, like that you join these collections because the utility is the community, and it's actually very hard to access that community in a safe way on Twitter, especially when not everybody is willing to pay for Twitter Blue, or the ones that do. I see this a lot with CryptoPunks. Like they have Twitter Blue, but they don't have the hexagon because they don't want to like dox themselves or whatever, or like be subpoenaable, by Twitter. Like there's a number of reasons people don't do that, but I really hope somebody solves that. And I don't know if Zapper plays a part in that, but I do think it would massively reduce the distortion and bring the Web 2 reality closer to the reality of the on chain data. And like I can't wait for somebody to solve it. And in my community, I recently implemented a form. It's like a Google form type thing, but it's actually you connect with your wallet, and then you can connect with your Twitter and your Discord. So like all of those entries are validated. Of course, the wallet one is the most secure. You have to do a cryptographic signature. But the connect with Discord, connect with Twitter, that's all pretty cool. And I've been using that to build a database, like a directory, really. And then I have a Zap, like a Zapier Zap that creates a Twitter list from that database, and that's cool because like I'm sort of able to achieve what I'm describing here, but it's not native to the platform, and it's totally in an opt-in basis. And I don't know. I think that would be a really really cool thing, and hopefully Twitter or somebody can solve it, because I surely don't have the expertise or time.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a good point is like, we met each other in Basel in Miami, not because like we're friends on Facebook or because we follow each other on Twitter. It's because we both have a punk. So it's the node in the social graph, or like the link, was on chain. And I think like that's the interesting takeaway about Web3 social is, what if the social graph is already there? It's just not surfaced properly.
No, I think that's exactly it. I think it is there. And especially when you take like kind of like multiple mutually owned assets, right? Like if you own a Punk and like a Genesis Rock and like a Yacht, like the chances that we are very good friends and like-minded people just gets like exponentially higher each time.
Yeah, and Balco, just to share my little like own experience on that. We try to tag punk holders Twitter in Forever Punks, and it's a manual process, and it's really hard. Because then people transfer their punks. There's always new people that enter, so it's really hard. And currently, it's manual, and I don't see a way how it will go away unless there's like a native on-chain solution. But Seb, maybe a question to you then. Like we all have multiple wallets, multiple addresses. Do you guys kind of have that construct that one person or one entity has multiple wallets, or do you kind of like do some sort of work to infer like which wallet belongs to like a person, or how do you tackle that problem?
Yeah, that is quite a problem. So we have a feature where you can bundle accounts on Zapper, but that stays local. So it's like not offline, but like you can use it to track your own portfolio. But we don't have that for social features. Um, and it's something that's like we're trying to think about how exactly we solve it, because obviously, it doesn't mean you have like one address is one human. Um, a human can
Yeah.
have a bunch of addresses. And then there's obviously a part of like, we don't want to do the inferring because we shouldn't even be able to. Like, it would be weird if, like, obviously you can, on chain, you can like infer, but like there's, in a way,
Because I
in a way, it should
I
be
take
left
this.
to the user to like, you could link yourself and you can create like a social profile for people to discover. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is something that I think a lot about, because when you're on the feed on Zapper, like it's for that address, and when you switch to another address that you own, you're gonna have a different feed. So is that really a good experience? Like, I don't think so. So it's definitely a problem, and I honestly don't know how we're gonna solve it, but we're gonna deeply think about it.
Because I say the word inferring because I have read that these chain analysis companies, they do kind of like this probability based inferring that like I don't know, this type of action means that 90% is the same entity, stuff like that. uh, so I don't know, maybe you guys could like maybe add an option, like if you want inferred identities or something like that. That could be maybe something, but I know it's a lot of work. So but yeah, Valko, shall we wrap soon?
Yeah, I think so. Try to keep these to an hour. So we went a little over today, but it was a really exciting conversation for everybody in the room. Thank you for joining. I've pinned to the space our new Punks Roundtable Twitter account. I was very reluctant to make yet another Twitter account, but I do think it's important to have one, especially for people who want to notify or be notified of the spaces without having to turn notifications on for like all of my tweets, and like vice versa. I don't want to clutter my personal timeline just with Twitter space announcements. So going forward, we'll be hosting the spaces and announcing the spaces and their guest speakers and all of that from that account. And we'll try to keep everything in that feed very pure to just this space itself so that people feel comfortable turning on notifications. So yeah, that's pinned up top. Click into it. give it a follow, give it a retweet. We are now automatically, publishing all of these recordings on different podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. So for anybody who didn't make it, or if you enjoyed this space and you want to share it with a friend, just follow the main Punks Roundtable account. Click the link in the bio, and you should be able to get access to all of those different things. And if you have any feedback for how we're running the space, how we could improve the automation of sharing out the podcasts or the Twitter record or the YouTube recordings rather, let me know. It's a new process for us, but we're really excited. We don't have to lift a finger. It's pretty amazing. Shout out to Karim. I don't even know how to say your username anymore, Kareem, but yeah, shout out to Kareem for helping automate that. It was a really tough process, but we think it can be really valuable for a lot of Twitter Space hosts out there. And Seb, thank you for joining. It was a lot of fun having you here, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It was fun.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye. Have a nice day.
All right, later.